plugin. By default, this plugin is disabled, so you have to enable the service. It's called rm_image to reform. Start the service. If we go to the reform directory, the actual plugin is located in reform, plugins, image to reform. Now before we get into that, we already have a form called example form. So we want to make a folder in the plugins folder, image to reform, in an example form. Now if we had another form, we could call that form 2. All the form names would be a folder in here. Now if you're scanning from an MFP, whichever form you want to process it, you'd want it to go into that folder. So for right now we're just going to use example form. And to simulate an MFP scanning to here, we're just going to drop a TIFF image in here. And the service should pick it up. If we go back to the reform directory, since we have example form, it processed it and put it in the backups folder. If we open up VDP Designer, and open that text file, this is the form that we had scanned, and the OCR text field works on top of this. We could put a box onto here, and the OCR engine recognizes the text. If we were to put an image in a folder where a form doesn't exist yet, so form 2, the service will still recognize it in there. But it'll be sitting in the spooler folder. Okay, so now we're actually going to go through an example of using this from the beginning to end, seeing what it would look like making a new form and actually utilizing this. So let's open up VDP Designer. Now we had already made a folder in this folder called form 2, so let's work with that. We don't have a form yet, so we have a blank form. We're just going to save this as form 2. If we open up that text file from before, we can map some OCR text fields onto it. We could call this one customer name. And this could be quote number. It looks like the OCR picks up the text. So if we save this form, now we have that form created. So now let's actually try to get that document to a location. If we open up the workflow designer, new document automation, drag form and file onto here. Now the text file would be the text file in our backups folder, form 2. And we're using form 2. Okay, now our output, we're going to use saved file and save it to a folder on the computer. If we add a connector, yes, we want to configure it. We'll save it as a PDF. And for right now, we will save it to the C drive in the temp folder. Now, our OCR fields come up as variable data that we can use. So for the file name, we can choose either the two that we made. We're going to use customer name. We're going to skip the metadata. Now if we hit execute, it'll modify our form. We could save this. Now if we go put an image into that form 2 folder, in here, and we should see it appear in the folder we specified, which was on our C drive in the temp folder. And that's the customer name. And that's our PDF.